and welcome to Petrol and welcome to the long-awaited review of my electric MG. Now, before we get stuck into the review, two small apologies. I should have actually filmed this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but circumstances on the day of filming didn't go my way and I wasn't able to do it. But the upside of that is, that means we've lived with the car for an extra sort of 3 or 4 weeks, and that's, if you like, grown my opinions of the car quite a bit. The other thing is, the car's a bit dirty. We are using it every day as our daily. It should have had a wash today, but I just haven't had the time to wash the car and get the filming done today. So please forgive me for those two things. So let me talk you through my thoughts on the MG so far. I want to talk to you about the things I really like about the car. There's a few things that I'm not so keen on. I'm going to start with the badge, and actually on my collection video I think I pretty much nailed that, and most of the comments were in my favour. You do not look at that badge and think MG's of the past. It's now a Chinese owned company and they've just bought a brand, so kind of forget the MG thing altogether. Judge the car on its own merits. The second thing, when I heard I was going to get one of these, I kind of wanted to really experience this lower end budget EV, and at £27,000 on the road, and I'm sure there are some deals to be done that could probably get you into one of these for maybe lower than £25,000 for a brand new all-electric car. I think that's pretty good money. But I wasn't overly convinced with the form factor and the styling, this kind of compact SUV. They're so common nowadays. It's not ideally my type of car, but I don't think it's a bad looking car. And actually we've had quite a few people come up and ask what it is. Oh, what's that? It's a nice looking car. The colour of this particular car isn't my bag at all, but I'm living with it. It's okay. And then the final thing, from a styling point of view, I'm not that keen on, sorry MG, is I really don't like the wheel design either. It's just that little bit too fussy for me. So let's kind of get those things out there. They are small fry compared to what we've got to talk about with this car, because honestly, this car has surprised the hell out of both myself and Mrs. Petrol. It is a very, very competent car. I want to talk about practicality first of all. Let's wander around the back and have a chat about practicality. So practicality, regular viewers to the channel will know there are two very important tests whenever I get a car. And the first one, I do like this little swivel MG badge, is can you fit 2 dogs in the boot? Well, yeah, of course you can. It's huge, the boot. What do you think, girls? Any excuse to get in the videos? Now, the interesting thing about the boot of this car is it has a really nice feature. So let me just get the 2 dogs out. They can go and have a play. Come on, you two, you go and have a play over there. And the feature is, it's basically got a removable boot lid, or sorry, boot floor. And you can do 2 things. You can have the boot floor set like I had it there, and it basically then gives you some underfloor storage, or just take the charge cable out. You can actually set that lower down and it gives you a much deeper boot, so there's more space for stuff. The only difference is now there's quite a big lip between here and the bottom of the boot floor, and you've got this little cargo net. So I really like that. It's been well thought through, and for a car of this budget, I think actually that's pretty clever stuff. The next big test, regular viewers to the channel will know this one as well, is can you fit a bike in the boot? Well, the 2 seats drop down relatively straightforward. There's no power assistance and stuff in here. Remember, it's a 25 grand car, but I have my bike just around the corner. I haven't actually tried this. This is a first time. So, can we get... Are you helping? Are you? Can we get my beautiful Bianchi Arcadex gravel bike in the boot without taking the wheels off? Honestly, I'm not sure. No. Front wheel off, I reckon that's going to go in, but not with both wheels on. Not a great surprise there. So, next thing I want to talk about, let me just put my bike around the corner again. So I think the bike was being a little bit ambitious One of the things to say, by the way, is MG do an electric estate car as well, and quite a few of you have said you should have had the estate ped. Well, I didn't have a choice. This was the only vehicle we could get our hands on, and it is interesting because I think apart from the Taycan Cross Turismo, the MG is the only other estate format full electric car on sale today. Put in the comments below if you agree with me or if there are any others. I can't think of any. So let's have a look in the rear passenger compartment, see what the rear passenger legroom is like for a tall, lanky bloke like me. Just need to put the seats up. And this is honestly the first time I actually got in the back of this. And it's not huge space in here for my legs. These seats seem pretty comfortable. The pan roof gives a huge airy feel to the cabin. And again, judging on for the budget of the car, for the market positioning of the car, this is an all right space. There's ISOFIX in here. You've got a power socket in the back. There's no kind of air controls, climate controls in the back. It's not too bad. Now, before I jump in the driver's seat, I just want to show you under the bonnet and have a chat about the architecture of the car in terms of the electric battery stuff, because I think it's quite interesting. Oh, I've got to shut the boot. So yes, let's just pop the bonnet, because I think what we'll find under there is really interesting. Now, the thing about this car, I mean, they do electric and petrol versions of the car, and it does look like they've just basically craned the internal combustion engine out and put the electric stuff in. And what I find about cars like this kind of bottom end of the price range, is they've got to save money somewhere. You kind of, to make a car for 25 grand is impressive anyway, and it's really when you look under the skin. I'm not saying that this isn't well made or well put together, but just the finish of underneath the engine, and arguably you don't lift the bonnet very often in a car and go, hey, look at my engine bay, but it kind of does. It's a bit disappointing and underwhelming, and because of the architecture of the car, and what I mean by that is the fact that really what they've done is replace the internal combustion engine with an electric motor, rather than design it from the ground up as an electric car, like something like a Tesla with that kind of skateboard design with the batteries along the floor and a motor at either end. It means you've got no stowage at the front. So you could probably get a little bit of stowage in here if they designed it slightly differently. So it's just stowage at the back. But I just find it quite interesting when you lift the bonnet and you start to look at the details of a car at this price point. That's where you find the price savings. But let's jump in to the driver's seat and take a look. So welcome to the world of horrible materials and scratchy plastics. Well, at least that's what you think, but it's not what you get. Actually, I think the cabin of this car is really, really nice. It's a great place to be. These seats are super comfy. The steering wheel has a nice feel to it. There's a few things so first of all, there's no reach adjustment to the steering wheel, just tilt, and even that's not particularly great. So you can't get the best seating position in the world. I'd like the steering wheel much closer to me. Everything else though, there's some nice cup holders here. There's a kind of little bin there to store stuff. The touchscreen we'll talk about more when we're out on the road. The main driving controls are a little rotational dial here. Super easy to use, very easy to kind of get, from reverse to drive and off you go. All in all, it's a very impressive cabin. And I think the thing that Tracy and I have found with this car is it's exceeded expectations, and I find that really interesting because, often cars, maybe you look forward to owning one so much, or for me as a review, I look forward to driving one so much, and then suddenly you actually get to drive it, and it's not as great as you think it's going to be, and it's a disappointment. When you get in a car and you have no expectations or low expectations, there's a good chance it's going to exceed them, and this car definitely does that. It feels really well built in here. It's very comfortable. You've got all the things that you need. You've got Apple CarPlay, but there's a really nice little floating island here. The USB charger's underneath, and then you basically stick the USB cable through here, so it just tidies things up. Just really nicely thought through bit of design. That I love the material here. It's almost like a faux wood. And then, you know, you've got some nice kind of rubberized material on the dash that's got some trim to make it look like leather. It's not. But yeah, it's really good. So let's take the car for a spin up the road. It's not a performance car, and I definitely approach driving this car with a kind of expectation of it's just a daily get to work and back car. It's not a special morning drive car or a performance car, but actually it's pretty good. Okay, off we go for a little drive in the MG. It has a 100% full charge. It's charged on my Zappi overnight, and that's giving an indicated range of 142 miles. Although MG kind of talk about 170 or so miles, in the type of driving this car's done since we've had it, which is pretty local stuff, we haven't done any long journeys yet, 140 miles to a single charge is about what you're going to get. It's only got a 45 kilowatt hour battery pack, so for some people that will rule the car out straight away if you wanted to do longer journeys. Now, as it happens, on this particular review, I'm literally just going to drive it up the road on a few of my favourite roads just to talk about the general driving dynamics of the car. I am planning to do a longer trip in this car, but clearly the second you do that, you are opening yourself up to the mercy of the public charging infrastructure in the UK. So the experience we've had of the car is we have a 7 kilowatt wall charger at home, and that makes this car super usable. We're probably only having to plug it in to charge it, you know, maybe once a week, and that's really great. And having had a recent petrol crisis in the UK, this car instantly makes you very smug, because you drive around and you drive past petrol stations with, you know, queues of people queuing up for petrol, and it does make you feel a little bit smug, and it does kind of make you think much more about electric vehicles. I would actually call this is probably the perfect gateway drug car into electric, because it's not ridiculous money. You know, if you were to look at something like, I don't know, an I-Pace, a Mustang Mach-E, a Polestar 2, they're my favourite electric cars, but they are quite a lot of money to buy. And obviously then you've got things like the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron GT, which are really expensive. So this, you know, 25 grand, it's pretty good. If you just wanted to test it out, if you weren't sure, this is the good way to go. In terms of driving, now, a few things. I've got a couple of different drive modes. I've got, at the moment, I'm in normal, and then there's a little mode selector here. If I pull it back towards me, it goes to E, which is Eco, and that just deadens things off and makes it eke out as much range as possible. I don't drive it in E mode. This car's pretty dead to the throttle anyway. I tend to get in it and push the little button up so that it goes to sport mode, and then you've got a little bit more pep. It's that instant torque, that instant acceleration you get from an EV. What I would say though, this car only has a maximum speed of 87 miles an hour, which is still 17 miles an hour into losing your license territory. So, you know, it is easily capable of keeping up with modern day traffic, and you don't have a feeling that you want to drive fast when you're driving this car. But for me, just to get that little bit more pep, that little bit more response, I typically chuck it straight into sport the second I drive it. Mrs. Petrolped, she just leaves it in normal and enjoys herself just as much. The other thing you've got on here, and it's a bit motorsport related, you've got KERS. Now, I'm presuming that they're borrowing that acronym from Formula One of a few years ago, Kinetic Energy Recovery System. To you and I, that is regenerative braking. And you've got 3 levels of regenerative braking. I'm currently in level 1, so I'm doing 50 miles an hour. If I lift off, it really doesn't retard the car that much at all. There's a little bit there, but it almost feels like the main sort of slowing down of the car is from aerodynamics rather than regenerative braking. If I go into level 2, just push up, and again lift off, it's just that little bit more. And then finally level 3 is actually relatively aggressive. If I go up to 55 miles an hour and let off, and I'm slowing down now, 40, 45. There we go. So it's not quite one pedal driving. If you were to drive something like a Polestar or a Mustang Mach-E, their one pedal driving modes are really quite aggressive actually. Now, as it happens, I quite like that level of regenerative braking, and obviously the upside is you're putting some of that kinetic energy back into your battery pack and making you eke out a little bit more range. But it does mean when you're just mooching on a road like this, you don't really need to brake that often. When you do brake, you're going to be again recuperating some of that energy into the battery pack, probably before you actually start to engage the actual discs and pads themselves. But it's a peppy little car. It's not a sports car, but it's super comfortable. The ride quality is very, very good. It soaks up the bumps of a typical British B road really nicely. So if you're just driving around, you know, it's not a harsh, crashy ride at all. There's no damper settings as it happens. That's pretty much it for your drive modes. There is another one button here that says battery, and all that does is it basically on the little TFT screen in the middle of the dials, it just tells you what your range is to empty. My range is now 128 miles. So for the money, if you wanted, where this car sits for me, I think if it was a primary car, if you wanted to do longer journeys, you may well struggle because of the range. But if you wanted a second car, if you wanted to dip your toe into the water of electric vehicles, I think this is a brilliant option. I don't know what residuals would be like. It may well be that you want to consider maybe buying a used one. You could buy one that's maybe 12 months old and get yourself into it for even less money than buying it brand new. But I think it would certainly be a nice way if you weren't sure about electric, if you didn't want to commit too much money. I think this is the perfect choice. I'd be really interested to drive the estate electric vehicle that MG do, because I think form factor wise, so many EVs are this kind of SUV format, whether they're the compact SUV this kind of size or whether they're a bigger SUV, something like one of the bigger Audi e-trons for example. And I actually think an estate car makes much more sense, certainly for my lifestyle. I think it would probably be a bit more aerodynamic. As long as you can get the packaging in for the batteries and stuff, then it kind of makes sense. But yeah, so happy to report so far we're loving the MG. It's surprised us greatly. It feels like a quality car. It feels like it's put together well. It feels robust. All the things that you probably wouldn't expect the kind of lower end budget cars to feel. So, you know, I'm actually going to stop using the term lower end budget, because I honestly don't really think you should approach this car like that at all. It's just a good car for the money. You get a lot of bang for your buck. I'm not using things like Apple CarPlay at the moment. I must admit, I don't think the MMI is a particularly good one. But if you're using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you don't really care about that anyway, because you're just going to connect your phone. So it's not a massive issue. And most people would have a smartphone that they could plug in anyway. So, you know, I think MMIs in cars of this level, questionably, maybe they're becoming more and more irrelevant because people are just going to use their smartphone anyway. But yeah, all in all, a really, really good car. So the next plan for the car, I've still got it for a month or so, is I haven't done a big journey yet, because the last couple of weeks I've had road trips in other cars and foreign trips to Morocco and so on. I haven't really had the opportunity to drive this car very much. Mrs. Petrolped's been driving it most of all, and actually her go-to car now, if she's going out and she's got a choice of the Mini Clubman or this, she takes this every time. And I find that really, really funny, because when I first bought it home, she was like, "Ooh, MG, I'm not sure about that." And then she drove it and went, "Do you know what? This is a really good car." Anyway, I'd love to know what you think about it. I know this is a bit of a one-take review. I'm a bit pushed for time today, but I desperately wanted to get some content out and kind of talk to you about this car and talk to you about just how impressed we've been with it so far. And there are very few things that I'm not massively keen on, if I'm honest, and I have to kind of balance those with the price of the car. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. But if you've enjoyed this one, look at that view over Harting Hill. Beautiful. If you've enjoyed that one, please give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol.